Welcome back, everybody, to the Radical Moderate Podcast. I'm your host, Pat O'Brien, and today I am doing part 2 of my episode with Scott Davis, who I call my restaurant Razorback blood brother. I think we're going to kind of get into all those things on this episode. Welcome back, Scott.
Thank you for having me, man.
So on last week's episode, we really did a pretty deep dive on like how we're friends and our differences and our similarities. We talked a lot about January 6th, but Donald Trump in general. And I liked your point a lot at the very end, talking about how maybe he got elected because people were told you can't vote for him. And when you tell somebody you can't do something, that's what they're going to do. But moving on from that, I had a thought kind of during the break. There's a person who has been part of the world which we're deeply passionate about, which is sports, a big-time personality in that realm, who quite recently has entered the realm of political commentary, and that's Stephen A. Smith. Like, what do you think? Yeah, what do you think about all that?
Well, I mean, as crazy as it sounds, and I think this goes back to a guy even like a guy like Trump, who's real estate developer, TV personality. Again, as we talked about the first episode, where it's laughed off the stage at the event. In essence, you almost created this monster, but you also opened doors, in my opinion, to where, I'm watching Como and Bill O'Reilly and Stephen A. Smith the other night, and he's doing everything but announce, he's running for president in 2028. And it's just it's just an example of kind of where we've drifted to where a guy that I've always felt like is probably a little bit radical, even in the sports realm, is maybe he comes across, at least as today, maybe a little bit more reasonable in the political realm, and and being able to, he's one of these guys that's seeing it on both sides of the fence. And I don't think he 100% agrees with either side. And I think that if you see him, run for president, we'll say we talked about it.
Are you saying you think this is going to happen? Are you calling it?
I think it could happen. And,
That's it.
And so, I think his comment, that I seen on the show was, I'm not going to do it if I don't think I can win.
Now, which show was this?
This was on Como and Chris Como and Bill O'Reilly.
Okay.
And
they do what? Do they do it together?
They do. All three of them get on.
Okay, I didn't
get on the show.
I've listened to Cuomo quite a bit. O'Reilly, I don't listen to. Quite frankly, I forgot who's still on. But
I think what they've done there and with that News Nation is try to put together kind of a melting pot of.
Gotcha.
I've got the Democrat, I've got the conservative, and maybe I've got somebody in the middle, which is ironic because that's what they've made in Stephen A. Smith. And kind of what I appreciate about him though, and listen to some of their shows is that, number one, he'll call the bullshit out on both sides, with it. And in the same breath, if one side is, if they win on an issue, he just say that's a good deal, for us and for the country. In the same breath, if it's something that he doesn't agree with, he's going to call it out, and has no allegiance to either side. And so I think that's what kind of makes him intriguing.
Let me ask you about Stephen A. Smith, because I've certainly seen him over the years on ESPN, but I kind of saw him as a guy who just would be like real firm in his opinions. He didn't care if he's wrong or not. He's just trying to entertain, which is perfectly fine.
Right.
And maybe I underestimated him. But my question is, as he makes this transition to trying to be an informed political voice, do you think that the guy who maybe years and years ago started as the sports guy, do you think he's really done some studying and listened and like he's evolved to where he is informed about the things he's talking about?
I mean, just listening to him, Pat, I think so.
Okay.
I mean, I think he's got a lot of good points on things that they're talking about on the show. And again, I think it's something we're going to see in elections in this country moving forward. It may be as simple of a deal to some voters' minds that I want the candidate that relates to me more. I want the candidate that feels normal, not the one that's going to be so far left or so far right that that I've got to cross some lines and so yeah, I think that's a good possibility. I think when we look forward again to, I know it's a long ways away, but 2028 presidential election, that's what would be intriguing me. Could you imagine Stephen A. Smith going up against Gavin Newsom?
So you're saying the Democratic primary?
Yes, and I think that's something for the Democrats, and this is something I've talked to you about before, because being a business person, being a sports person, being competitive, I look at it from the other side. I mean, me and you have had these conversations where I'm like, if I was the Democratic Party, I would do this because I think it would give me a better chance. I think in this last election, we've seen so many Democratic candidates that may have been your best candidate on the Democratic side, but for some reason got just put aside and we don't even want to think about them. It's like that, the Democratic Party, I think they've caught some heat over the last few years on this. It's like, no, this is your candidate, as opposed to there's 5 or 6 here, may the best person win. And I think that's what will be intriguing, for me, at least when I look at it from that Democratic side, or the Democrat Party is, are they willing to let the cream rise to the top and may the best candidate win, no matter who that is. I mean, we've seen that again with, I know it may not have been your preferred candidate, but a Tulsi Gabbard that was a Democrat before, an RFK Jr. that was a Democrat before. I felt like an Amy Klobuchar.
Well, I voted for Klobuchar back in 2020.
Right. And so what I'm getting at is I think you've got a lot of these people that, you may have even agreed that would have been a better candidate than Joe Biden or a better candidate than even Kamala Harris. But again, it was like, this one is the one that.
Yeah, no, and you're probably right on a lot of that. You got me thinking though on the Stephen A. Smith, because if you look at what Donald Trump did, I think a lot of people would say he kind of hijacked the Republican Party. I mean, because he was never a Republican. The guy was pro-choice and this sort of thing. But he finagled his way in there with a strong personality, and he has made them a lot more populist. And we could go into a lot of those policies. But maybe I presume what you're saying is Stephen A. Smith running in the Democratic primary. But are you saying is it possible he can run in the Republican primary?
No, I don't think you'll see him running the Republican. I think it's a better chance he runs on the Democrat ticket as opposed to the Republican. Who knows if he runs as an independent? I think Donald Trump was a prime example. You call it hijacking the Republican Party, and maybe that's what it was. Maybe it wasn't, but you definitely, I think Trump definitely recognized I need that vehicle.
Sure. Yeah.
And not, we just never seen it. Again, it's where I go back to, we've got 2 choices. Most people in this country are going to vote for whichever one they feel like is the least worst solution.
Right.
And that's all they feel like they've got to choose from. We've never seen an independent, rise from the bottom, to the top. And, I think you may have seen a guy like RFK Jr. May have gotten more votes than anybody, but I think that's just, if you don't have still these 2 parties and ride in one of those vehicles, I think it'd be a groundbreaking thing if we did have an independent. Actually win today, but I just don't see
the rules are really hard because the Democrats and Republicans are setting up those rules. I will say, maybe to be more civil about how I described what Trump did and try to check my bias, instead of saying he hijacked the Republican Party, like any business person, entrepreneurial mindset who sees a market opportunity, he definitely disrupted the Republican Party. And he was saying negative things about John McCain, and then he was running against a Bush, again, yet another Bush was running. And I think he probably saw an opportunity of like, this is stale. Like, I mean, they're going to lose and people aren't going to get excited. And there's no question that Donald Trump was a very exciting choice for people in the beginning and has had that staying power. I won't give you the name, but I remember back in 2015, and I had just gotten into the Sonic business, and I was just working at one of my restaurants, and I had this cook who, just a guy who's making minimum wage, trying to do a good job, and I was working side by side with him, showing him something, and somehow you know how restaurants are. It's a long kind of mundane job a lot of times, so you start talking, and we started talking about politics, and somehow he said, Pat, I want to ask you a question, because he knew my background. He said, what do you think about Donald Trump running for president? I was kind of surprised because I didn't know this young man would be that engaged. And I was like, well, I kind of, at the time, I didn't think a lot of it, but we kind of got in that conversation. And the point he made was, I just think he could be different. I think he might be like, this is a guy, this young man who was not engaged, is not giving money, not going, he feels like no one's speaking to him. And he thought the idea of a Donald Trump, probably because he had seen The Apprentice and stuff, was appealing. And it wasn't for me, but I'm really deep into it, right? I'm Mr. Policy and all that. So he definitely had appeal. Now can we segue? Where it's actually going, the Stephen A. Smith thing is, I want to talk about some sports, which is one of the things that we have the longest conversations about. So let me frame the question this way. Just college athletics, and let's limit it for now just to football and basketball, and probably a little more football, not just about the Razorbacks. Because basketball really, really good, football really, really awful in the past, but just kind of the state of college athletics. And let's talk about it as a marketplace and all that. What's your first thought when I throw that question out there?
I think, of course, especially with me and you, it's either baseball, basketball, or football. And of course, obviously, we're in the middle of basketball season. I'll tell you just the intriguing thing with the NIL. And even keep talking about Stephen A. Smith, and you had him and Jay Williams and Kendrick Perkins, and they're sitting there, and this is something, a real thought of mine, talking about Peterson at Kansas, and he subs himself out.
Well, I didn't see that. So he's not. I guess the question is he committed? Right. But you're saying he subbed himself out in the game.
Literally 2 minutes into the second half, he hits a 3-pointer and then tapped Bill Self and said, "I need you to get me out of here." And he's only played, I think it's 12, maybe 13 games.
Because he missed a lot of games
of the season. And one thing that they were talking about on the show was the product in college basketball is better than the NBA. I mean, the viewership is up by 30%. That's the unbelievable thing with all the money, the mountain of money that's being spent on college athletics now. But we're talking about the viewership is up more than it's ever been. And so it's hard to say that it's, I'm one of those ones at first was it's killing the sport. It's going to, it's doomsday and all this stuff. Well, numbers don't lie. And that's what we're saying on that. I think they had a good point on the NBA product. Even though you have more talented players, it's not as exciting to watch it just because they're not going to turn it on until probably closer to the playoffs or once they get there. But yeah, the dynamic of seeing 18 to 22-year-old kids now, that is a job for them now. They are employees. I think it's one of those things where we've seen a huge transition from where it started to even where it is today. On early on, we're going to pay you a bunch of money, but then they go there, and what if they don't play a game? Well, you've already paid them all this money. I think now you're getting more sophisticated people involved as far as getting these contracts lined out and things. But again, you're still going to have an example of just like Peterson at Kansas.
So with Peterson, are you thinking, because I don't have access to his contract, are you thinking he's got to guarantee money And so then he's not incentivized the way the guys would have been before. Because this guy, you're talking about a guy who's most people are saying he's the number one pick,
right?
No lower than 2 or 3, worst case. But are you saying he just is mailing it in and like not? I don't know if is he saying there's an injury? I mean, what or do we even get information on why he's not playing?
No, I think it would. I would relate it to our business. It's like if you cut us all of our dividends and our profits in January, we're probably not going to work very hard for it in February through December, if we're being honest. And and I think that's part of what they're dealing with, and with with some of these college athletes and things, and whether the people in this corner are telling the right thing or the wrong thing, I guess we'll just have to see how it plays out. Selfishly, being an Arkansas fan, we see him not wanting to play 18 to 20 minutes a game. And then we see a guy like Darius Acuff who goes, regulation, all of both.
Yeah, we're taping
overtime.
We're taping the night after he played all 50 minutes of the game, never came out. And I know for those who are like, how do we get so deep into sports? The reason I wanted to bring this up is look at it from a market. And right now it's a market with very few rules in college athletics. So there's a ton of money involved. There's a real huge demand, which is where, there's two sides. There's money being generated from the fans through watching television to go in the events and all that. There's tremendous interest. But then until, I don't know, certainly the last decade, it lose track of time, athletes didn't get anything more than a scholarship, but now they have NIL, and really the NIL really is kind of a pay to play. They're essentially employees, just not, taking their taxes out and treated like employees precisely. So having said all that, I view it right now as this bubble that is unsustainable. It's just going to keep feeding on itself, and there's no rule-making body fully that can hold it accountable. And as a fan, initially, I think you kind of made this point earlier, that was kind of a turnoff. Now, though, I'm seeing it more from a business perspective and just saying, like at the beginning of the internet, there was no regulation, and Congress actually just decided we're going to take our hands off this thing and see where it goes. Tremendous innovation happened because of them not over-regulating it. So where do you think we are now? Do you think it is time to bring down the hammer with rules, or are you kind of coming around to it's kind of interesting to see the bubble?
I think you've got to have more rules in place than what we do right now. But I again, in that stat I told you about earlier, when your viewership's up by 30%, you can't ignore that either.
Yeah.
And so I think you've got to do things. Whereas I'm one of these types that I was raised to life's not fair, and so it's that's just part of it. When we look at this, especially what college athletics has become, which has become a business now.
Sure.
Call it like it is. That's what it's become. And so, I just think that, it will continue to evolve. You've got to have rules, but then, like I said, you've definitely got to acknowledge that increase of viewership, and if you are one of these fair types and want everything to be fair in life, well, we just seen Vanderbilt almost make a college football playoff, visit. We've seen Indiana win the national championship in football. I'm sure we'll see some of those scenarios this year in basketball as well. Again, I'm let the cream rise to the top, and we'll hope it's Arkansas.
Yeah. Well, our real agenda is we just want the Arkansas Razorbacks to succeed no matter what the rules are. I think that just to finish the thought on college athletics, what used to be really exciting about it was that you would have people who were trying to work their way toward something. And so like in football, you'd have the walk-on linebacker who wasn't good enough to play his freshman year, but then he gets in the weight room and he gets better and better. And by his junior or senior year, he's earned a scholarship. And so I think from a brand standpoint, you could really get behind that sort of thing. And you knew their names and you kind of knew their stories and that sort of thing. I think it's just not like that anymore, but I don't want to be the guy who's always pining for nostalgia. Like, I'm kind of the opposite of that. I don't know. I guess though, kind of you've mentioned winning a couple times. I guess if the direction is we've got to figure out how to take this amazing product and just, if you focus on winning, then eventually that will tell you what the rules do need to be. But right now, quite frankly, if we put rules in place, we might just penalize the Indianas of the world or the people who really, I'm not going to say shut out, but people who've never experienced success before. And Arkansas is, right there right now. We've been a bottom dweller, for quite a while in football, but then in basketball, where we have a tremendous history and we've won a national championship in '94, and we were the winningest program in the 1990s. But then we had quite a bit of a lull there. And then more recently, show my bias, I think we got like the best basketball coach in the country right now, John Calipari, a guy who I used to hate and think, I used to demonize, kind of like going back to politics.
Right.
He wasn't on my team, so he's bad, and everything he says, I'm going to view through the lens of I'm against him. And now that he's here at Arkansas, I'm like, that's a pretty good dude, and his players love him, and I'm seeing his genius. So I think that, I don't know even where I started that point originally. Did you follow anything?
Well, I'll say, obviously we're biased towards John Calipari, but I think people would agree across the country on you may need a guy like that to help write the rules,
right,
for this game. And because you definitely and I think Calipari's got so many good, especially one-liners, and he's talking about the team they go against, a couple weeks ago, and had the 26-year-old that has his 3 kids and his wife. He's got some really good points on those kind of things. We can't, we have changed college athletics into professional athletics, if we're being honest about it. But you still can't let that go on forever. We can't have kids playing 7, 8, 9 years just to get a paycheck. So I think that's one of the biggest things in my mind that they've got to get a solution on, because and it started even with some of COVID and things as well, to where these kids were affected, and if you were affected academically or something like that were to happen, or an injury, I get clearing that player to maybe give them an extra year of eligibility. But when we're talking about, again, a guy with 3 kids and a wife, and he's trying to play his 7th year of college basketball or trying to come back from the professional ranks, I think that's where you're kind of crossing the line and going to make it challenging.
Yeah, and I think to kind of go down the road for a second of like why I really like sports, particularly college athletics. I love the competitiveness, and sometimes when I'm sitting there watching a sporting event, and my wife's probably wondering like, why is he so invested? Like, she's a fan, but I'm like living and breathing every play. A lot of it is it's a escape for me from my day to day. Got to be a leader in my business and carrying the weight there. But then it's also a way for my brain to stay active and kind of say, hey, would I have made that move? Would I have put that player in? And I think you're the same way. To me, it's a release of aggression that in a generally healthy way. I mean, we can, but as opposed to what you did when you were, 16 years old, and your aggression usually came out against another person, and you got disrespected. Now we're going to get in a fist fight. I didn't get a lot of, you probably got more fist fights than I got in. I was a lover. I really wasn't a lover either, but you get the point. But you see what I'm saying about, I think sports at its best is a release for people to do.
I think it is. I think it probably shows whether good or bad, maybe even some character things, whatever. I think at this stage in my life, being such a sports fanatic, I notice myself now in how I reacted after we won, or how I reacted
or lost.
how we lost. and and trying to find the opportunities and what could have done this different or that different, or if this, a lot of times if this one thing would have happened different than but it's the same way on the other end when you are winning.
And I didn't know we were going to go here, but you reminded me of this. So if you listen to the first episode with us, I talked about how Scott and I became really close. In 2018, we went to the College World Series. And so not to rehash the old wounds, but that was a situation where the Razorbacks had won game one. So you got to win 2 out of 3 to be the national champion. And we'd never won a national championship before. And so we won game one, and then we're up in game 2, 9th inning. There's a pop-up, and it lands right in the middle of 3 players. Not really anybody's fault, but it's very unfortunate. And then we end up losing that game, losing game 3. And so I walked away from that week with 2 states of mind. One was kind of my normal state of mind, which was just like, the Razorbacks are cursed, and I'm just so disappointed we didn't achieve this goal I wanted. But then my second was the one that was more lasting, which was, I got to spend all week with a person who's now become like my new best friend. And that's where Restaurant Razorback Blood Brothers started, is somebody who was as passionate as me about it. And that was a shared experience. But then we won or lost together. Right. And so that's where I adopted the phrase, enjoy the show. Right. And now when I'm watching a big game, I try to breathe, and I'm like, just try to enjoy the moment.
Right.
Because the ball's going to bounce anyway. And these guys, I know they're getting paid a lot of money, but they're still 18, 20, 22 years old. Like you remember yourself at that age, you don't, in national television audience, there's so much pressure. I mean, I can't even imagine.
Right. No, and for me, you don't think I'm crazy. Obviously would have loved for the Razorbacks to win the national championship that year, but I feel like it's something that brought me and you even closer together.
You think that the loss brought us closer than the win would have? Probably.
We faced adversity in essence with each other and side by side. And I think part of what's been beautiful with our friendship is I think we could see those things would lead into other parts of our lives.
Yeah.
And stuff too. I mean, you're a man that helped name my youngest child, spoke at her wedding and all that, I think, was birthed from facing that adversity. We face adversity in business and our personal lives. Those are probably even more special or way more special conversations than the politics and even the Razorbacks. So yeah, I think that's a special thing that we were able to encounter together. And again, back to relating it all to college athletics today. That's probably why you got viewership up and so many people. I mean, imagine an Indiana football fan that has went to the stadium for 50 years and now they are national champions. Again, being very against paying them all the money and everything at first, I've kind of come around on it, a little bit now, because now it's not just, it is always easy for players in football to go to Alabama or Georgia, or in basketball to go to Kentucky or Duke. I think a lot of them now want to, obviously some money's involved, but they may want to go trailblaze their own path. And it kind of, incentivizes your administrations. They better be some dang good business people too. They better not just be good at athletics and what kind of show we're going to put on with that and how we're going to build rosters and those things. You better have a heck of a business mind to you. And that's where I think we have the general managers coming into play. All these, it's really, if we're thinking about it, it's been wild and crazy over the last 5 years, even on everything that has been added to the pie in regards to college athletics.
Well, yeah, and I'm going to draw the show to a close with kind of summarizing what I think we've talked about. So we started talking about, how Stephen A. Smith might be a disruptor in the same way that Donald Trump was. And maybe if not him, it's someone else kind of opened a door. And then we got into our love of college athletics, which I think is really coming back to the point of life in general, and I would just say capitalism is kind of a clarifying thing. You cannot be complacent in anything you do. Like there's no, like with AI now, it's gonna absolutely replace some people. Those people are just gonna have to do something else. They're gonna have to evolve or die. I mean, that's how this thing works. And I think where we ended there on college athletics is were some athletic directors and people who thought they had a pretty cush situation. Now they're realizing like, I better evolve or I'm not going to have a job. And the product is probably better. They're spending a ton of money, but except when they call you and I to get the money, like we don't, and they do, we're not the big guys though. So, all right, we're going to have to end it. We're going to have to end part 2 with my restaurant Razorback blood brother, Scott Davis. Thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Appreciate it. Had a lot of fun.
Yeah, we'll have you back. For this week, I want to appreciate and say thank you to everybody who listened to the POV of POB.